Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to wait for our screen to pop up there so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you'll know how to participate in today's event. All attendees will remain muted throughout the presentation. The slide on your screen shows a screenshot of what you should see on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're most likely listening to us using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select phone call in the audio pane. There's a little white button next to the word audio, a little white arrow. If you click on that arrow, it'll drop down and you can select phone call and the dial-in information will be displayed. If you're experiencing issues with static, interference, or garbled speech, I suggest you try a different connection method. You'll have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing your questions or comments into the questions pane of the control panel. You may submit your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them at the appropriate time. If you are joining by phone, or if you would like to provide input following the meeting, please submit your questions and comments to Luke Stedke at luke.stedke, S-T-E-D-K-E, at drive.ohio.gov. I would now like to hand it over to Luke.
Well, thank you, Jackie. We'll start off with the thank yous. We owe a big thank you to Jackie Honorino, who was just speaking, and also Brianna Bedains from O.Comms. They are masters behind the scenes with the technology, and we greatly appreciate their support. Welcome. This is our first DriveOhio Alliance webinar of 2021. We want to thank you for your continued support of this series. I would like to say, the power of this series just goes to show by attendees that have signed up. 246 individuals throughout the state and the state of Ohio and the United States see value in this venue, and we appreciate that support. Today, we're going to be talking about smart mobility in your community. On our last webinar, we talked about the future and the development of advanced air mobility on our air side of the house. And the previous webinars have been focused on kind of the future of transportation, where the research is happening, what type of technology is being deployed, where that technology is, vis-a-vis deployment in this state. And with this event, we wanted to focus on the individuals, the communities that are taking those type of solutions and actuating them in their own community. So we're going to hear from some great panelists, and then we're also going to hear, we wanted to focus also on the ecosystem of companies within the state of Ohio that are doing the work of smart mobility, and that's Oculi. They're a LiDAR company out of Dayton, Ohio that's doing a lot of work in Silicon Valley as well, and we'll hear from them. We'll also have your questions. Some housekeeping things, we will be going to a quarterly approach to our DriveOhio Alliance meetings. This will be the first one. To give you a little bit of preview of the next two, for May, we'll continue the 18th for these events. In May, we're working on a 2-day policy event that's going to focus on smart mobility. So don't want to give away too much, but some companies and people that you will know will be participating in that, so that'll be a great event. And then also in August, we will do electric vehicle and charging. We'll hear a little bit on roadmap from Sarah and some of the stuff we're doing with ADS and some other stuff that we've done previously with our EV report from June of last year. So kind of putting a more in-depth dive into electrification. But before we get to our panelists, I would like to introduce Howard Wood. Howard is the Executive Director of DriveOhio, and I will give him the floor to give some updates. So Howard, take it away.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks to our panelists for joining us today. You'll want to hear from them more than me because they have very exciting stories to tell where the rubber meets the road. But I want to thank everyone for joining. If you're in Ohio, via webinar, at least you didn't have to drive to get here. And we hope you're staying warm. And we hope if you're in Texas, we hope you're safe. And certainly Punxsutawney Phil really did a number on us a couple weeks ago. So we'll get through the winter as we always do. You can go to the next slide, Luke. So just a few notes. Of course, I'll just reintroduce DriveOhio like I always do. We're the state center for smart mobility, and that is connected, autonomous, shared, and electric technologies. And that's both on the ground as we think about automated vehicles, of course, but it's also in the air. And you'll hear some very exciting things out of Springfield, for example, today. And our mission extends from infrastructure development, planning and policy, into economic development and workforce development. So I think we'll touch on all those topics today at a local level. Luke, you go to the next slide, which I think is mine. So this is a bit of a map of what we call the Ohio mobility technology ecosystem, and certainly not expected to read all the dots and words on the page here. But we do show a breadth of resources and projects in Ohio, some of which are well known and others you might not know about and might learn about today. But there is a key factor in Ohio, and I think one word would be partnership. And that is to say, for smart mobility, we're partnering with business and industry, of course, who are bringing these technologies to market. And DriveOhio is doing our best to prepare the state from a policy and infrastructure perspective to be ready for those technologies. But moreover, from that partnership, it's the local government. And it's really nothing, I don't think anything really happens without dedicated local officials who are really doing the hard work of implementation. That can sometimes mean design. It can means troubleshooting projects, keeping them on schedule, on budget. The local officials deal with the public much more on these projects than DriveOhio would. So I certainly want to spend today to take this moment to celebrate that partnership, to recognize local public agencies, because without them, this map is basically empty, and my presentation is much less interesting. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Luke for our first of our great speakers today. So thank you.
Thank you, Howard. And before we get to Mr. Niemeyer, we will do our first poll question. We'll have 3 throughout the day, 1 before each speaker. And again, as Howard said, focused on our local partners. Here's our first question. Do you have a transportation challenge in your community? Simple yes or no question. And just to follow up what Howard said, it really is, it's how we do what we do, the ability to identify innovators within local communities, within companies and organizations that see this as a way to increase safety, to make travel more efficient, to increase the quality of life for all Ohioans. I think that's what the DeWine Husted administration, that has been our charge through the administration, to utilize technologies, smart mobility technology specifically in our sector, to solve local challenges and thereby increase the quality of life for all Ohioans. So I'll give it a couple more seconds. %, yes, 11% no. So we'll build upon these questions, and I'll have a kind of a call to action at the end. So appreciate your participation. So our first presenter is Kirk Niemeyer. Kirk Niemeyer has been City of Engineer for Lima since 2002. He received his Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Kirk is a licensed PE with more than 20 years of experience in public works and infrastructure projects. Prior to working for the City of Lima, Kirk worked for DLZ in Columbus, where he was involved in water and wastewater treatment plant design and deep tunnel construction. Kirk is actively engaged member of the Allen County Bike and Pedestrian Task Force, chairman of the Traffic Commission, and chairman of RPC's Transportation Advisory Committee. And also, he is a graduate of Wapakoneta High School, which I am as well. So as I always say, the heart of Ohio is Northwest Ohio. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Kirk Niemeyer.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Luke. And as far as thank yous, I'll talk about these various partners, but a big thank you to Ohio DriveOhio team, Ohio Northern University, Professor Fan Yi, US Ignite, and Spectrum, and it's been a real interesting journey so far. I've only got 4 slides today. I was told to keep it between 12 and 15 minutes, so I'll keep it short and sweet. But just to give you some background on Lima, Ohio, Lima is north of Wapakoneta, where I grew up. But Lima is about 40,000 people in Lima proper, and about 80,000 in our urbanized area. So, as far as Allen County, about 102,000 people. So we do have a considerable amount. We're industrial city. We have Procter & Gamble plant, which is the largest plant in the world, believe it or not, here in Lima, Ohio. We have Husky Refinery, and we have Nutrient, which makes products for ag. We have General Dynamics, which makes the M1A1 tank, and we have a Ford engine plant. So part of our problem, part of the good in our community, which is our jobs and our commerce, is creates somewhat of a problem for the city. We have quite a number of railroads within the crisscross Lima, and we have rail yards within Lima. So we always have trains that are blocking crossings, and we've constructed many underpasses or overpasses to deal with these situations, but that takes a considerable amount of time and considerable amount of money. And we just finished one recently that I started around 2002, and it took 20 years, almost 20 years to complete, and about $14 million when it was all said and done. So it gets very expensive in trying to move people and goods. So back in January of 2019, the city reached out to DriveOhio. I believe our mayor came across an article and said, reach out to these folks and see how we can get involved. So we did, and luckily they came to Lima and sat down with us, and we discussed, our transportation issues. And the big one was top of our list was, stop trains or slow-moving trains, and people stopped. Emergency vehicles stopped waiting to get around, and what can we do about it? So we entered into an MOU agreement with DriveOhio, and the DriveOhio folks started to talk to their partners in private industry and the education world, and more discussions started to take place. And in the fall of 2019, we started talking with Professor Fan Yi she's a civil engineering professor at Ohio Northern, which is close to Lima. And she had very interested in our problem and very interested in having her students take a look at the project. So became a capstone project for her and her students, and they did a lot of research and a lot of looking all around the world to see if any other communities or anybody else was having the same issues and what they were doing about it. So They did a great job, put a report together, presented it to DriveOhio and the city. Eventually, the students and professor presented it at City Council, both last spring of 2020 and in the fall of 2020 when they came back to school. So it was a great, City Council enjoyed it. They understand the problem because they hear from all their constituents. From there, the project again became more talked about, and DriveOhio continued to promote the project, and some more partners joined up, which were US Ignite and Spectrum, and they, along with the ODOT folks, brought the technology to try to continue to move the project forward. We had 4 problems listed in our MOU, but the one I list here, rail traffic congestion and delay to motoring public, is one of our biggest. We can move on to the next slide, please. This is just, hopefully you can see this map pretty well. This is the shaded portion is the corporation limits of Lima. It's a little bit probably hard to see. We've got the different railroads listed up in the legend in the left-hand corner. And these are all active railroads. CSX and NS are probably the biggest. The Indiana, Ohio, third. And then we have quite a few short line railroads that either, most of them lease track off of CSX, but the circles indicate where we have grade separations within the city. The larger circles indicate where there are, adequate distances for trucks to, they're more or less built to today's standards, if you will. The smaller circles are locations where it's very, it's limited. You can't get, 13-foot, 6-foot tall semis under or over or through. So those are limited, but still within, industrial areas where, we need to move people and goods. So even though it looks like we do have quite a few underpasses and overpasses, we are still many delays and still a lot of issues surrounding that, the issues of all our train traffic. I think we can move on to the next slide, please. So since early fall, we've had weekly or bi-weekly meetings with DriveOhio, US Ignite, and Spectrum. US Ignite and Spectrum bring a lot of technical people to the table that even ODOT has a lot of resources. To be quite honest, there a lot of these different types of systems that they're talking about deploying in the Lima area to track trains and predict their movement, and then eventually, the goal is to relay that information to the motoring public so they can be made aware of a train approaching Lima and have be redirected safely to a crossing, or that they can get around a train and go about their day. So, basically what we're looking at here is setting up information at various locations throughout the city and county. Some of these, we're looking at a couple miles out even, and some directions to track these trains. And again, I don't understand all the technology, but there's different systems of radar, and then that's all got to be taken and digested and analyzed and put in some sort of format that it can be, again, put out to the public in a way that, we don't want to create chaos, where somebody gets an indication that, hey, there's a train coming, now I got to step on it. But those details will be worked out as we go. So the location so far, the folks at Spectrum and US Ignite, we made ODOT and the city have a long history of working with the railroad, and it can be difficult at times to get permissions to do certain things. So a lot of the locations that we're looking at are directly over the railroad, and this is if we put any kind of instrumentation, we've got most likely get the railroad approval. So we're working, we will be working with the railroads and maybe looking at alternative ways to go about it, but depending on the technology. Again, this is some of this is a little bit above my head, but that's why we partner up, and that's why it's been such a good working relationship so far, because we've got a lot of people involved and a lot of people bringing ideas and resources to the table. When we did start the process with US Ignite and Spectrum, there was what we called the discovery session. We brought out all the reports and data that that everybody worked on, shared those amongst everyone, and now we moved on to or shortly thereafter we moved on to clearly defining the problem so everybody understood all the ins and outs of and issues, and now we're moving on to the working towards the implementation phase. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. And that's basically where we've been and where we're at now, and moving forward. It is exciting because, again, I explained that these problems, at least our past experience, have taken a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of time to solve. And we think we can. We have a project here that's not only going to help the Lima community, but it's going to help cities, villages, everywhere. We think it will have really positive outcomes from this project. So thank you. And I don't know if we're taking, I guess, questions through the chat box, and if so, I'll do my best to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk. No, that slide's a good prompt. Yeah, if you do have questions, the chat box is the way to get that to the panelists. We'll also, once Stephen finishes up his presentation on Oculi that does radar, I think I misspoke earlier introducing Oculi when I said they did something else. They are a radar company. We'll have a time for some group questions. So we can go to the next slide and our second poll question. If you do have a transportation challenge in your community, for how long has this challenge been in the community? We have 4 responses: 10 years or less, 11 to 20 years, or more than 21 years. And of course, not applicable if you don't have a challenge. Now, just to follow up on what Kurt had talked about, partnership is, of course, always paramount. And the ability to bring the railroads into the project is going to be of paramount importance. we've started conversations with Matt Dietrich at ORDC to get his perspective, and he brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise when it comes to railroad specific and also the challenges around Lima. So we greatly appreciate that support as well. And then also just wanted to give you a heads up, if you didn't have a chance to watch the announcement live on January 26th, you can go to DriveOhio, our website, and you can watch about a half-hour presentation right there on the DriveOhio website. So that's the Lima announcement that focused on US Ignite, Spectrum, and Lieutenant Governor John Schustad representing Innovate Ohio and DriveOhio. So let's see here, 10 years or less, 11%, 11 to 20, 24, wow, more than 21, at least half. Interesting. Well, again, we appreciate your ability and your willingness to answer our questions. And now, Tom Franzen is our next presenter. Tom has been the Springfield Assistant City Manager since 2013. Prior to that, he worked in the City Manager's office, where he focused on economic development programs. And in 2013, he gained the additional responsibility of overseeing the Springfield-Beckley Municipal Airport. Mr. Franzen has been actively engaged with the state of Ohio's efforts to advance opportunities related to advanced air mobility. The industry has collaborated on multiple fronts with the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Air Force Research Lab, what we call AFRL for those inside the industry, the state of Ohio, of course, DriveOhio and Fly Ohio, and the Dayton Development Coalition. A lot of times you'll hear them recognized as DDC. And he has been very active with our Sky Vision program, that is the ground-based detect and avoid system housed at the Springfield-Beckley Airport. Mr. Franzen has a Bachelor's of Arts degree in political science from Rutgers, and another Bobcat in the room, a Master's of Public Administration from OU's Voinovich School of Public Policy. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Franzen.
Thank you, Luke. I appreciate the introduction. Little worried about Kirk starting off with just 4 slides. I got the same instruction, but I'm bringing 20 slides to us today, but I'll try and move through them quickly for us. But thank you to Howard and for the leadership of DriveOhio. We certainly appreciate the partnership and so many of the efforts going on across the state of Ohio. But I'll go ahead and get to it. So thank you. Next slide, please. So just quickly, overview of the Springfield Beckley Airport. Let me get my slides going here, make sure they're right. The city of Springfield owns and operates the Springfield Beckley Airport. It's about 1,800 acres. It's an aviation complex that includes a general aviation airport, of course, as well as the eVTOL research and development testing area that we're developing, and is also home to a joint base of the Ohio Air and Army National Guard, and then also a UAS range, which obviously we just mentioned is home of Sky Vision, where we utilize that technology to fly beyond visual line of sight at the airport, and then an adjoining industrial park called Air Park Ohio. So it really is an aviation complex where we promote to industry. You can certainly come test, you can test, research, fly, move into prototyping, and then we also have a place where you can manufacture. So it's kind of an ecosystem that supports the industry. Next slide. So here you're seeing kind of a future vision of what Springfield is moving towards. So this is this advanced air mobility hub. To the left, you see a picture there of an elevated vertipad or recharging station with an aircraft on top. That's an eVTOL aircraft. And then just above that, you see a picture of a UAS, an unmanned drone kind of flying there as well. But pictured here is a 2-story office building and adjoining hangar that is part of the future of Springfield and how we're going to be supporting this industry. Next slide. So over the last few months, there's been a flurry of announcements and activity related to Springfield Beckley Airport, and so we're very excited about that. These 3 industry-leading eVTOL companies, eVTOL is an acronym for Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing Aircraft, but these companies announced their intent to come to Springfield Beckley in partnership with a new Air Force program called Agility Prime. Beta Technologies there on the left is from Burlington, Vermont. Joby Aviation is from Santa Cruz, California. And then there on the right is Lift Aircraft from Austin, Texas. They each have announced their intent to locate their flight simulators, their aircraft, and for beta, some of their recharging station and equipment at the airport. But before I get into details about these announcements or the overall effort, I thought it would be good to maybe answer a question that might be popping into some of your heads here. Next slide. So why Springfield? You know, I think it's a fair question to ask as we join our partners at DriveOhio and others to push into the advanced air mobility. But I think, you know, it's a simple answer. The answer is because we've been here before. So next slide. So the national road, right? So we're talking about the evolution of technology and technology related to transportation specifically. The national road was obviously a huge benefit to the city of Springfield. We were known as the town at the end of the pike in 1838. So President Thomas Jefferson authorized the act to build a national road from Cumberland, Maryland to Ohio, which was the first national transportation project for our country. It opened a gateway to move for westward expansion, but also a direct route for people and goods to move freely among the states. So it had a tremendous influence on the way Springfield developed and led to some significant growth for our community. A lot of Springfield's growth was related to agricultural type growth, the inventions of mowers and reapers and binders. So agricultural implements was here in Springfield known as the champion companies, and the city of Springfield was known as the champion city for a number of years, and you still see it on lots of shirts and things here around the community. But the champion companies, along with two others, merged to form International Harvester. It's a company that still exists today and produces trucks. So a long legacy of growth and invention and industry, all as a result of an investment in infrastructure, an investment in transportation infrastructure that then saw that evolve from horses and wagons to cars and trucks and so on. So important, I think, to kind of step back and look at where we've been. So next slide. Our tie to the Wright brothers. I think every Ohio city likes to have a tie to the Wright brothers. Ours is direct and really born out of this industry growth that happened within the national road and other things coming to Springfield, Ohio. But a patent attorney named Harry Toolman relocated from Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Ohio in 1886 because of this strength of innovation and invention that was happening in our community. He set up a law firm in a building here in downtown, actually located on the National Road, now called Main Street here in Springfield. But in 1904, Wilbur traveled the interurban streetcar from Dayton to Springfield to meet with Mr. Toolman to talk about a patent for their aircraft. He focused their efforts, or he encouraged them to focus their efforts on the three-axis control elements and also the concept of the roll control. So very successful patent attorney who handled 5 applications for them over the period of 17 years and really assisted the Wright brothers to protect their intellectual property. So certainly a lot of interest going on now in the eVTOL development, and certainly is still true to this day. But in 2006, the city dedicated an 8-foot tall bronze statue that you see here in this picture to honor Mr. Toolman in the efforts there to help the Wright brothers get the patent. We marked that occasion on the 100th anniversary from the day that the patent was issued back in May 22nd, or on May 22nd, 1906. So I'm not sure if every community has a statue of their favorite attorney, but we do. Next slide. As we get back to Springfield Beckley, certainly I'd love to say that the Wright brothers flew at Springfield Airport, but that would be a stretch. But construction began on the Springfield Airport in 1946. It was ordered in 1943 by the Secretaries of War, Navy, and Commerce at the time, to be a backup to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base during World War II. So that was the start of the Springfield Airport. It quickly evolved into supporting the evolution of aerospace technology, as in 1955, the 162nd Air National Guard Unit relocated to Springfield as it transitioned from piston to jet aircraft because of the runways and infrastructure at the airport. The 162nd started flying with the F-84, transitioned to the F-100s. And then in 1978, they transitioned from the F-100s to the A-7. And then in 1993, from the A-7s to F-16s, where they maintained that mission for a number of years, ultimately ending with an F-16 training mission. But in 2010, as a result of BRAC, the base realignment and closure process that the United States went through, the F-16 mission was merged to other units outside of Ohio, and the Air National Guard was backfilled with a new mission, which was flying remotely piloted aircraft, the MQ-1 and now the MQ-9. So a huge transition of technology happening there at the airport when you look at just the evolution of aerospace and aircraft development. And you can kind of see it there on the slide, moving up to the top right with the MQ-9, but just below it, it's remotely piloted. So these folks are sitting in Springfield, Ohio, operating the MQ-9 around the world in defense of our country. So it's kind of a neat history, but I think also shows this continuous upgrading of infrastructure and support to match and to help with the evolution of this of the missions at the Guard base. Next slide. So the partnerships that Luke referenced, I think we threw them out there, but it's been a constant partnership really here in Springfield in working all of these different issues. But Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Air Force Research Labs, NASA, the Ohio Air National Guard, the state of Ohio, Jobs Ohio, certainly DriveOhio and Fly Ohio, the UAS Center, the Dayton Development Coalition, and so many universities and colleges here in the state have worked in some way along the way, either in studies and research that have kind of positioned the airport and positioned Ohio to kind of attract and work towards this advanced air mobility ecosystem that we're talking about today. One of those efforts was the OASIS. It was the Ohio Airspace Strategic Integration Study that was completed in 2014. It was intended actually to serve as a national model for the Air Force that was coordinating at the time with federal, state, and local governments, as well as aviation groups and academic institutions around the idea of remotely piloted aircraft or drones at the time. And so the idea was to work collaboratively with everyone in the community that has an interest in what's being flown above their heads, but to try and come up with identifying airspace where this could be flown, or where those could be flown safely. One of the primary goals, of course, was for AFRL to find an area near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where they could test fly their drones, their remotely piloted aircraft, as a means to help the Department of Defense save money, as well as to expedite the technology development so that they could get those systems out to the warfighter quicker. So that was one of the primary goals of that study. It identified airspace around the region. Springfield obviously was one of the airspace areas at the top because of our close proximity. About 15 minutes from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was a natural fit for that. That was also the precursor to what led to the development of SkyVision, the ground-based detect and avoid radar system that we mentioned earlier. It was a partnership between the state of Ohio, the Air Force Research Labs, and the city that ultimately, culminated in approval by the FAA in 2019 for it designated a 225 square mile area above Springfield Beckley where you could fly unmanned aircraft up to 10,000 feet with no restriction in size, which was kind of the first of its kind in national airspace in the country. So it was a big day, and you can certainly, the two pictures here featured on this slide are the event where we celebrated the FAA approval of this airspace. You can see the governor and the dignitaries there by the bus, but also gave me an opportunity to sneak a picture of myself in there with the governor, and also a couple of our commissioners from the city, Commissioner Joyce Chilton and Commissioner Dave Estrop as well. Next slide. So this is a slide that I borrowed or stole from Fred Judson with the Ohio UAS Center in Fly, Ohio. But I think it does a great job of illustrating the level of collaboration and the number of partners involved in some of these efforts. So this is a slide for SkyVision that just kind of, it's a critical piece of our air mobility ecosystem, and I think does a nice job of illustrating all the partnerships or partners that were involved in bringing that to fruition. Next slide. So a transformational event occurred in 2020 that really accelerated our activity and involvement in this advanced air mobility industry. And it was the launching of Agility Prime by the Air Force. It's a non-traditional program that the Air Force launched to seek and accelerate the commercial market for advanced air mobility aircraft. Their desire is to create a robust domestic industry and supply chain to support the development and production of these vehicles. In the context of, quite honestly, the United States was being outperformed by China and others in the development of these aircraft. So this was the Air Force's intentional effort to try and expedite the development of this technology in the United States in a way that they could get involved directly. At the same time that they announced the Agility Prime effort, they also announced that AFWERX, that is overseeing the Agility Prime program, would be moved under the umbrella of Air Force Research Labs located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So this was a big benefit, obviously, to the region and to the state of Ohio, as AFRL's oversight of that and management of it has the potential to drive some of this activity to Springfield, to Ohio, and to this region, and opens up tremendous opportunities for the state. Part of Agility Prime's, their initial innovative capabilities opening establishes a rapid contracting mechanism for a race to certification. So that's kind of what you're seeing with some of the eVTOL companies that we'll talk about, is they have been in the test mode, test flying, and are working through the airworthiness approval with AFRL and with the FAA with the race to be certified. And then also that would drive then a procurement opportunity with the Air Force. So there's tremendous opportunity for industry, and that's attracting interest as well. Next slide. So I'm going to watch my time here a little bit. This was just a slide that I liked. The Agility Prime, for those that aren't familiar, I encourage you to Google Agility Prime and go onto the website. They've captured all of the events, the webinars that they've been doing. Obviously, in the COVID environment, these would have all probably been live events that people would have attended, but they were all virtual events. But they've done a nice job of capturing the information that's been collected throughout the launch of Agility Prime. And this, at the end of each day during launch week, they would capture kind of the essence of the conversations in these infographics. And I thought this one did a really nice job to capture the complexity and the moving parts related to air mobility and specifically the eVTOL piece of this that has so much opportunity for the country and for urban air mobility as well. But given our time, I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. So Beta, Joby, and Lyft. Recent announcements coming to Springfield, so it's very exciting. Let's go to the next slide and we'll talk about what infrastructure work is happening currently at the airport to support this effort. So the city did receive assistance from Jobs Ohio, a $226,000 grant to help the city install infrastructure to support these companies that are going to be coming to Springfield. So we are installing an elevated vertipad in partnership with Beta Technologies. So that's, think of a helipad. It's about 20 feet off the air, or off the ground, excuse me, where these eVTOLs will land and also recharge. The eVTOLs that we're dealing with now have fast recharge capabilities, so they're recharging in 45 minutes to an hour. So very similar to a Tesla or an electric car that we see on the street today. In addition to that, they are moving their flight simulators as well. So each of those companies has their own flight simulator. And the idea is that they're moving this technology here and to Springfield so they can be closer to the engineers, the airworthiness folks at AFRL and the Air Force. So it'll be a tight collaboration between those entities as they look to the eVTOL and what uses the military might have for some of this technology. The other thing that I think is important here is you'll notice there's a blue box on the ramp there that has a lightning bolt on it that indicates a recharging station on the general aviation ramp. So a big piece of this was the integration of the eVTOL activities into the general aviation airport. We didn't want to separate it to put it down at the other end of the airfield. We are fully embracing as a city and as an airport the full integration of these technologies. So the unmanned aircraft activity, as well as the eVTOL activity, is really centered here into the main area of the airport's operations there by the airport terminal. The other big piece that we recently just had the FAA approve the airport's master plan, and the master plan features vertiports throughout the airport, vertipads, and so the FAA is fully aware and has accepted the airport's master plan, which shows the adoption of this technology. So we're excited about that as well. Next slide. One of the announcements, or one of the on December 10th, we celebrated the announcement of these investments by these companies with a virtual groundbreaking. It was going to be in person, but with the ever-changing coronavirus rules that we were trying to follow at the last minute, we converted to a virtual event, which was fun. But you can see here on the slide on the right, Mayor Copeland, the City of Springfield Mayor, helped represented the Agility Prime partners in cutting the ribbon for Beta's recharging station. So that's the recharging station that I pointed out that's going to be on the ramp for eVTOL aircraft to land and recharge at that location. And what I did mention is just to the left of that is the city's refueling for general aviation aircraft too, so the self-fueling center. So it's really combined in all one area. Next slide. So a little bit more in-depth information about what the recharging pad and the vertipad might look like or will look like. So this is from Beta Technologies, and so they're investing about $1 million in bringing this equipment to Springfield that will obviously serve as a demonstration model, as well as a platform for other eVTOL companies to recharge as well as to test and evaluate their systems. But the planned components here as part of the recharging station is the landing deck, of course, but underneath this is featuring some offices. So it'll provide some office space for Beta and Joby and some of the other companies where they'll be able to do their testing at Springfield Beckley, but also have a place where their engineers and folks can work out of. In addition to that is the battery storage and a generator and HVAC unit that will power the other units. So Beta's concept here is modular in function so that they can quickly move these or establish these around the country as they build out a recharging network to support their growth. Next slide. So the big vision, the advanced air mobility hub. So this is showing, the recharging stations, the elevated recharging pad, the flight simulators that I just spoke of, and then also the addition here of the 30,000 square foot office and hangar. So this is being built in support of the activity that's happening right now with SkyVision and the Ohio UAS Center and the many customers that are coming to the airport to do their testing. And then certainly the eVTOL activity that's happening as well is drawing lots of interest to the state of Ohio. So this will allow for continuous growth of the industry and help build this advanced air mobility ecosystem. Next slide. And because I like to continue to steal slides from Fred Judson in the Ohio UAS Center, this was, I like this slide that Fred and his team put together because it kind of ties us back to the point that I raised at the beginning of the presentation related to the national road and its influence on Springfield, for that matter, and the nation's economy too, in the evolution of transportation technology. So this roadmap for the future of Ohio's air mobility effort shows a similar path of advancing technology related to air mobility. It leverages the investments that we've made collectively as a state and with our partners in the SkyVision technology that allows for beyond visual line of sight, and then the vertipads and vertiports that are being constructed today, as well as the advancements going on in the 33 smart corridor, and then our towers too, which is another topic probably for another day, because I know the UAS Center is probably, if they haven't spoke on it, will be soon, about remote towers and how that technology can kind of help tie all this together and kind of get us to that point where you're seeing eVTOLs or unmanned aircraft doing the delivery of the goods of, it could be medical supplies or packages and the things that we all expect to see here very soon. But so that's it for my presentation. I probably went over a little bit, but certainly went over your 5-slide limit. But thank you very much for your patience, and that's it for me. Thank you.
No, thank you, Tom. This is all great information. Tom did a really good job of talking about Agility Prime. And, you know, when we talk about on the ground in air, the one connection that always comes back to me is on the ground side when the Department of Defense had their DARPA challenges of 05 and 07 to really jumpstart the work around autonomous vehicles and everything that has come from that. So it's really, when Tom and I were talking about this, I said, Tom, it kind of sounds like you're developing the Detroit of advanced air mobility. And he said, that's it. That's exactly. And not to be flippant, that is the opportunity that we have in this state with these partners, is to develop advanced air mobility for the 21st century. And it's exciting, and we greatly appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So before we get to Sarah, I think we have our last poll question. Last poll question: do you believe smart mobility transportation solution? Do you believe a smart mobility transportation solution can help solve your community's transportation challenge? I did a little question tree there. To go back to Howard's slide, and Tom touched on it, and I'm sure Sarah will, and so did Kirk. When you look at that map of Ohio's what we call the ecosystem of innovation, and just all of the assets that we have on the ground and in the air, it truly differentiates what we're trying to do here in Ohio to anywhere else in the United States. So it really is, it's an exciting time to be in smart mobility, and it's a really exciting time to be in smart mobility in the state of Ohio. Give it a couple more seconds. Wow, overwhelming, 86%. Well, with that is a call to action. If you live in a community where there is a challenge in your transportation system, we encourage you to contact DriveOhio. We are here to connect and help bridge a gap between a technology solution and your needs on a local level. So it's an open invitation. My contact information is available. So please give us a call. So our next presenter is Sarah Conley-Ballew. She serves as the director of Sustainable Energy Solutions at Roll Action, a keynote nonprofit working to create a more just and sustainable economy in Appalachian, Ohio. Her work focused on catalyzing clean energy development in coal country through smart policy and planning. Sarah was the founding director of Upgrade Ohio in 2015, and that organization successfully reduced energy use in Athens County by 3% over a period of 2 years, resulting in $5 million in collected savings. She was a sole smart advisor in 2017, preparing local governments for smart solar development. She, another, I have to say, oh yeah, at this point, right? She has an MPA from Ohio University's Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. It's a pleasure to introduce Sarah Conley-Ballew. Take it away.
Thank you, Luke. It's such an honor to be part of this panel and part of the DriveOhio Alliance webinar series. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our project. We're going to take you south here, southeast, to a part of Ohio that may be less known for technological innovation, but very well known for rich natural beauty and a strong and vibrant community around other assets. So my sort of presentation is to kind of enlighten everyone about how Southeast Ohio, the Appalachian Ohio region, has been approaching the shift that I think we all want to see happen in smart mobility and connected vehicles in a rural context. Certainly, urban areas have the advantage of more people per capita, as well as more resources. In rural places, we have to take a different approach. So today we'll be talking about how our community and Rural Action as an organization has approached the process of moving into this space. Next slide, please. So I'll begin with just a little bit about our organization and why this work matters to us. Rural Action is a nonprofit working in Southeast Ohio. We have about a 23 county footprint. And our work has really been focused on building a just economy, and our goal is really to uplift the assets of this environment, build stronger social cohesion, and really strengthen our economy in a sustainable way. That work spans the gamut from cleaning up our streams to improving our forest resources. We also work closely with sustainable agriculture, the agricultural producers of our region, and entrepreneurs who are really trying to, innovate in a new space. We are a membership-based organization, and we have a sizable footprint that really brings together a diverse coalition of partners across the region. You're welcome to look at our website and learn more about our organization. It's just ruralaction.org. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So in 2018, Rural Action's members identified a strong priority for looking at sustainable energy solutions. When we say that, we really mean solutions that provide long-lasting economic change to a region that has experienced generational poverty from the extractive industries of coal and natural gas. Those are strong and important industries in our region, but we recognize that the next chapter is really a more diversified economy, incorporating renewable energy, strengthening our energy efficiency resources and conservation, and really building up the small businesses and local resources that we can use. Our work continues to grow. A lot of what we do supports these small businesses through technical assistance. See in this picture here, Snowville Creamery, which is a local dairy production facility. We've worked with them to help them identify, clean energy solutions from, improving efficiency in their operations. We're looking at renewable energy system for that facility as we speak. So, it's just an example of one of the partnerships that we've developed in the region. And it was around 2019 that we decided that while, of course, clean energy is an important aspect of the work, we really wanted to look at what it took to expand clean transportation options in the region. So Rural Action partnered up with ODOT DriveOhio, as well as Clean Fuels Ohio, which is our statewide Clean Cities Coalition Network partner. We also connected with National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the Hocking Athens Perry Community Action Agency, and with forgetting my last partner. We'll see them in the next slide, but together we pulled off a Department of Energy request to launch a 3-year, $2 million project to look at sustainable energy, to look at clean transportation solutions in a rural environment. So you can go on to the next slide here and we'll dig deeper into that project. So roadmap is really as we kind of have termed this project, and we're looking at how advanced vehicle technologies can really operate in a rural setting. It's a really important step to take to look at what mobility solutions can function in a rural environment where you have, very different features than you find in urban places. We're working on, or let's say the roadmap project is happening in tandem with the Appalachian Clean Transportation Initiative, which is really about the outreach and engagement and building the network of economic development practitioners and industry specialists to really bring everyone together and on the same page about what are the needs, what are the infrastructure challenges and solutions, and how do we really practice smart development in a region that, generally speaking, has not advanced in the same way that other parts of Ohio have. We also actively support the EV Cruisers Club, which is a network of electric vehicle owners and enthusiasts. We work together to learn more about the technology. We host ride and drive events. Well, pre-COVID, we hosted ride and drive events, and we really try to grow that network so that people have a resource and a place to talk about this technology and learn more. Next slide, please. So when I was asked to present, I was encouraged to talk about why or how our community really came to the conclusion that clean transportation and smart mobility was necessary or important. So I thought I would share that Rural Action's approach to anything that we do in our region in terms of economic development and ecological restoration is based on an approach called asset-based community development. The goal here is to really uplift the strengths and the assets that this community has, rather than looking at it as what are we missing, what's not here. Instead, we really try to focus on how we can build on the resources that we have. We have a strong base of talent. We have a good workforce development approach, and as we learn how to bring people together around these opportunities, that's really how Rural Action approaches this work. It's clear that clean transportation is something that is a real gap in knowledge, and the growth of this sector is really contingent on the study of and the real, exploration of what we need here, what we can build on. You can go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, in 2019 and now launched in 2020, the roadmap project really made sense here in rural Ohio, because we really are, a great place to study a rural environment. Ohio has all 4 seasons, varied terrain, and outside of the Appalachian region, we have a wealth of resources. Certainly those on the call here today demonstrate some of the talent we have in the state. Drawing on those resources has really been a huge benefit as we study this issue and as we look at what opportunities we have. So we really are drawing on that base of support. Autonomous vehicle testing, which is a big part of our project, is authorized on all roadways in Ohio, which does allow us to, study that in this project. And we're all keenly aware that roadway fatalities in rural places occur quite prevalently. And as we know, this technology is, I think, really driven forward by the fact that it is a safer and more reliable approach for vehicle travel. You can see in this map here, it kind of gives you an idea, sort of a feature of, we're looking at Athens, Ohio, sort of the metropolitan area of Athens, Ohio. We are kind of, the deployment of the 4 pilot demonstrations in the roadmap project are occurring in this region. And I think if we go to the next slide, I can kind of dive into each project area. So again, with our partners, the partner I forgot to mention before, which I'm remiss in not mentioning, is Transportation Research Center. They're a fantastic partner, and I'm going to start with them so as to make up for my brain lapse there. So TRC is piloting an autonomous vehicle study in the region. This is, through a 4-season and 2-year timetable. They're deploying a Tesla Model 3 on an Athens County rural roadway to really study what features of the rural roadway impact that vehicle's performance. And we've completed iteration 1 already and have found some fascinating results. We've learned a lot about, what does and does not translate to safe driving in a rural way. So we're really grateful to TRC as a project partner. Another project partner that we've been working with, as I mentioned, is Clean Fuels Ohio. They're a nonprofit that does serve the state in a lot of different ways, from fleet solutions and consulting to policy making to a lot of things. In the roadmap project, they're helping us to look at individual motorists and kind of understand their behaviors, using Bureau of Motor Vehicles analysis data. We've been trying to study, where are EV and hybrid EV and autonomous vehicles being purchased and deployed. Really looking at what are the limitations? Why are we seeing a higher usage in one part of the state versus others, and really compare and contrast those data sets. Our goal is also really to use this platform not only through roadmap but also through the Appalachian Clean Transportation Forum to really reach individual motorists and encourage them to learn more about how this technology can work for them. Our work also for the third pilot demonstration is around the transportation service provider sector. Those who are running everything from taxi services, the TNC network, the Uber drivers and Lyft drivers of the region, to the medical transport providers, institutional fleet providers. Really trying to educate them on what it might take to transition to an electric or autonomous fleet, and help them evaluate that transition and what it really will take to to make that switch. What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? And how do you make a plan? The fourth pilot demonstration is in partnership with the Hocking-Athens Perry Community Action Agency. They serve the region as the Athens public transit provider. They run ICE engine vehicles, shuttle buses throughout the city of Athens. And in the roadmap project, they'll be deploying one battery electric shuttle bus that will be replacing an ICE engine vehicle on one typical route, and we're going to just look at how that improves performance or impacts performance. It will be the first shuttle bus in our region that will be running full battery electric. And I am really looking forward to seeing what that impact is, not only economically, but also environmentally. And that, I think, gives us a pretty good overview of the project. Last slide, if there are any questions, or we're always looking for collaborators and input and feedback from anyone who's participating today. If you're interested in this project and you'd like to join us and really collaborate going forward, by all means reach out. There's my contact information, and I will leave it there.
Thanks, Sarah. So before we get to Stephen's introduction, when we were talking about, bringing a little bit different perspective to our quarterly DriveOhio Alliance events, the conversation revolved around not only what are we doing here in the state with projects, but also what are those companies that are developing the future here in the state of Ohio, right? So we wanted to do that with our first industry focus for Oculi. And Stephen Hong is who we have, is the CEO and co-founder of Oculi, a radar software company that has developed virtual aperture imaging, an advancement that achieves significantly higher resolution through software rather than additional hardware. Oculi's embedded software technique allows any radar sensor to achieve a substantially increased angular resolution, all with existing off-the-shelf mass manufacturer automotive grade systems. The company has raised $30+ million from top-tier venture capital firms located on Sand Hill Road, and has offices in Ohio, Silicon Valley, and Beijing. Prior to Oculi, Stephen was a partner at Kleiner Perkins, where he was a member of the hard tech investing team, focused on sensors, autonomous systems, AI, machine learning, space, IoT, 3D printing, robotics, and cloud infrastructure. For KP, Stephen co-founded Kumu Networks. He was responsible for product management, fundraising, IP challenges, business development, and marketing. Stephen started his career as a management strategy consultant at McKinsey and Uber, where he specialized in diligence and expansion strategy. Stephen holds a PhD and MS in electrical engineering from Stanford University and received a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Michigan. That we will not hold against you, Stephen. So it is my pleasure to give the floor to Stephen Hong.
Great, thank you, Luke. I think you already, gave a very lengthy introduction, so I won't speak anymore about myself. But great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Like Luke mentioned, I think we wanted to share a little bit about what the industry is doing here in the state of Ohio, and so it's really our pleasure to be able to share our story with everybody here on this call. So maybe if you can click, I've got a short video that we can use to introduce the company. Would love to play that, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics that we're working on, but I thought the video would set it up very well so that you guys can get a good overview for what Oculi is developing and what our technology is capable of.
This is making the
All right, thank you for playing that video. So that hopefully was a good introduction to the company. And so just to echo and highlight what was mentioned there, our core technology is software that we can apply to existing radars and enable market-proven, low-cost, robust, mass manufacturable sensors that are already on your vehicle to be hundreds of times better in terms of resolution and performance, enabling LiDAR-like resolution with existing sensors and very, very low-cost software. And so, I think everybody's heard about the promise of autonomous vehicles, right? If you can click to the next slide, I'll just walk through it. The promise of autonomous vehicles doesn't happen until we solve problems like this, because even if your autonomous vehicle is able to operate perfect in the sunny conditions in California where people do a lot of demos, if it doesn't work in the rain, if it doesn't work in the snow, it's not going to work here in the Midwest, here in Ohio. And so at a high level, can you click the next slide? The optical systems that people have been talking a lot about, LiDAR, camera-based systems, these are great when when the weather is perfect. But when you get weather like we have today here in Ohio, or like we've had the last couple months, it's really variable. And so your AV systems can't be up and down operationally depending on the weather. And so you need all-weather high-performance perception. If you can click to the next slide. Radars traditionally can see in all weather, but the traditional radar systems on our vehicles are very poor resolution and very limited in terms of what they can see and what they can make out. And so this is the compromise, the limitations of traditional radar. And if you click to the next slide, the reason why they are limited is because the radars that are on our cars today, they have a very few number of antennas, which means that the spatial resolution is very poor. And so what our company has developed is software that enhances these existing radars. It doesn't change the hardware, it uses the same existing market-proven sensors, but with our software, you click to the next slide, we deliver a 100x performance improvement with no modification of the actual sensor. And so we're able to take your existing sensors, hundreds of millions of which are already on vehicles, apply software to it, intelligent software that adapts to the environment, that dynamically changes based on what's happening around it. And this software allows you to achieve LiDAR-like resolution, but with sensors that cost $20. And so we think that this is really going to unlock autonomy and safety on a scale that's not been previously possible, just because traditionally your LiDAR sensors, your autonomous vehicles, they use perception stacks that are far too expensive, far too sensitive, and far too unreliable to be used on mass manufactured passenger vehicles that people would drive. And so with this type of sensor technology that's cost effective, easy to process, all weather, robust, and mass manufacturable, we think that the first problem, the hardest problem in autonomy, which is perception, can finally be solved with a scalable solution. Next slide. So our company is licensing this software technology to companies that already build hardware, and then we also build our own full stack products as well. If you click the next slide. We are right now partnering with companies that are developing solutions for ADAS, as well as solutions for full stack, level 4, level 5 autonomy. We've sold thousands of sensors already to several of the leaders in the space using autonomous vehicles. There's 2 autonomous vehicle fleets out there that are using hundreds of our sensors on their vehicles as the primary radar sensor today. If you click to the next slide. We have 3 products that we are selling. The 3 products kind of vary in terms of cost, size, power, and performance. The one on the left and the one in the middle are products that we've already sold commercially. These are using existing radar hardware, and this is solutions that are available today. And then on the right-hand side, we are actually developing another product that is going to be built on a more high-performance hardware platform. And this one, we believe, actually will be superior to LiDAR, not just in spatial resolution, but significantly in cost. It'll be several orders of magnitude cheaper. It'll be able to see significantly further. It'll have much better sensitivity. And most importantly, it's still going to be based on the same cost-effective, mass manufacturable radar hardware. So we believe it's really going to be scalable and mass manufacturable. Next slide. And as I mentioned, this software and this solution is really designed to scale all radar architectures, from your corner radars in your vehicles that you need for your NCAP safety requirements, for lane change assist, for blind spot detection. Those same radars can become LiDAR-like from a resolution standpoint with fractions of a dollar that enable you to use the same low-cost package, the same low-power package to enable safer ADAS features. And then on the very right-hand side, working with these robotaxi companies to leverage platforms that have more compute, that have the ability to run more sophisticated software, we're able to get higher performance and even better resolution expansion on platforms that have that capability. And so our software really scales up and down for all the manufacturers of radars, from the ones that make the low-cost sensors to the ones that make the high-performance systems for AVs. Next slide, please. Great. And so this is a snapshot of Falcon data. You can come check out our website, and we're going to have more data there. So just oculi.com. Next slide. And below is a picture of the data from our single front-facing radar Eagle. And you can see it has very high spatial resolution. So it's really LiDAR-like from a resolution and perception standpoint. But this is a sensor that costs less than $50 and can be mass manufactured. Next slide. And yeah, just more data. So you can come check out our website. These are all videos that will play. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of different perception challenges in autonomous cars and autonomous drones and autonomous eVTOL applications. Our sensor is a lightweight, low power, high resolution module that can benefit all these autonomous applications. Next slide. Great. And you can use it not just for perception, you can use it for localization and mapping. Pretty much anything you can use a LiDAR for, you can use the sensor for, but it's significantly cheaper. Next slide. And you can fuse it with other sensors. Next slide. Okay, I think these are probably good. Maybe you can go to the next slide. Yeah, we have a lot of robotic companies using our sensors as well. So it's not just self-driving cars that can benefit from this low cost, high resolution perception. It's any autonomous system, including a lot of different robotic applications. Next slide. All right, and I think that's all we have. So thank you again for the opportunity to present, and really great to share our story. So thank you for having us.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. And just not to put you on the spot, but while we have you, what is one prediction that you would like to make about this year, whether it's automation or just in the sensor suite, something that you see that you think is really going to have a breakthrough this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we hope to be one of those breakthroughs this year. So, just from a company standpoint, we've been pretty, I would say, under the radar for the last 4 or 5 years, and we're really going to change that this year. So we just raised a Series B, another $50 million or so. We're bringing that to the state of Ohio to be able to scale up and build the company even more efficiently. I think that we're about to officially launch our company and our product at the end of Q1. So, for those of you who go to the website right now and don't see all of what I showed you, it's going to be there probably in about another month or so, which we'll announce along with our funding. But we hope to really open up people's eyes to what's possible with radar perception, because I think people, when they think about high performance perception, they think LiDAR, they think camera. You've got 7 LiDAR companies that are publicly traded right now, probably cumulative market cap of $50 billion, but there's not a single car on the road that has a LiDAR. Whereas on the other hand, you've got probably 100 million radars being sold every year, and it's really underwhelming what people think of radar, because the performance traditionally has been very poor. So we think that this year with our software, we're really going to open up people's eyes to what's possible with radar perception, and I think provide a very scalable solution for you to scale your autonomous fleets with, because perception at the end of the day is going to drive everything else. It's going to drive processing, it's going to drive storage, it's going to drive battery, it's going to drive cost. And if all of those things are built on your kind of tip of the spear, which is providing, data that is very difficult to ingest and very expensive to deliver, it's going to make the rest of your pipeline very expensive as well. So we think this year we're hopefully going to be the kind of radar perception shift, and that's what we're working towards this year. So. Well,
we look forward to hearing more from our friends at Oculi and our Ohio-based radar company. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
If we can have our other 2 panelists up here, we're getting up against our 2:30 stoppage time, but I did want to pose one question to the group, and it focuses on, we've got a wide range of diverse background of the Alliance, right? We have companies that are like Oculi that are developing these solutions. in real time. We've got institutions of higher learning that are researching this. We've got policy people that are following the trends, not only in the state of Ohio, but nationally. And we have local political subdivisions that are trying to figure out, we've got a challenge. It's been here for a long time. How do we go about finding a solution? And if you just want to take a quick second, just to kind of real quick outline how you found your either opportunity in the case of Springfield around a complement of assets, or how did you define a challenge in Lima, or just to identify in Athens a possibility for this technology. If you just take a couple of minutes, a couple quick thoughts, and we'll start with Kirk first.
Oh, put me on the spot first. Well, I guess the question is, how did we, define our problem, and how do we move it forward? I think a lot of people that visit Lima, I think Lima is, a little bit unique in that we have this problem. This problem's a little bit more evident, especially for the folks that live here. In the larger cities, in the rural areas, speaking of Wapakoneta, the same CSX line that goes through Lima goes through Wapakoneta, except if you watch that train go through Wapakoneta, it's going through about 45, 50 miles per hour, and it's a split second that you're, delayed as far as getting from point A to point B. Here in Lima, again, the trains are slowing down to make and break, pick up, cars from sidings, from multiple locations. And so that brings everything almost to, a crawl. So, I'm sure there's other cities out there, similar to Lima. Everybody, may not benefit as much as, places like us, but it will be shared, technology once it's developed. And so it was very easy for us to, when we sat down with the DriveOhio folks to, again, I said that was our number one transportation issue. Yeah, we've all got, everyone has issues with, improving infrastructure just from deterioration. But, this was the one thing that we sat back, and when you talk about autonomous vehicles and flying and aircraft and everything else, we identified this as something that we thought, kind of in the back of our minds, that there's got to be something out there, somebody that can, bring a group of people together and figure this out. So, we're happy to be moving that forward. So thank you.
No, we appreciate all that you guys are doing in Northwest Ohio. Sarah, how did you guys identify your opportunity?
It's just one of those situations, I think, where we want to have a seat at the table. And I think here in Southeast Ohio, this is, a great way to draw in resources, draw in support, and participate in, a real statewide effort for innovation. So it's fantastic to have the opportunity to be part of, a broader network. And I think that's really the exciting part of this is that, as a state entirely, we can really be moving forward. So, yeah.
Excellent. And Tom, how did you guys identify your opportunity?
I think for us, it was an economic development opportunity that's led us in the direction we're going with the airport. Really just identifying and seeing the trends of where certainly aerospace was going, and certainly nudged along by the Guard's decision too, when the F-16s left and they shifted to completely RPA, remotely piloted aircraft kind of led us down the road of, well, what can we do as an airport? The infrastructure that we have, how can we leverage that, plus the obviously, we're blessed with the location next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the strengths that Ohio brings to the table. And what could we do to help leverage that for economic development opportunities, job creation, growth, and investment for the Springfield-Dayton region is really where we were. We certainly have opportunities inside, the municipality as far as uses for autonomous vehicles and as well as air and ground. And so we're certainly looking at those too, but today we're talking about the opportunities at the airport. So, but definitely economic development.
Excellent. Stephen, we'll give you the last word. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, well, Ohio has been, I think, a fantastic home for us as a company. We started this company originally with a team that was out of Wright State University. Did a lot of work with AFRL and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on radar systems over the last few decades. And so, this area has, like Tom, Kirk, and Sarah mentioned, the heritage of the Wright brothers, the Air Force Research Laboratory, all of this cutting edge research, and not just that, the people and the skill set and the knowledge base here that really make it for a really great place to build up an engineering and technical team. And so when the company was started, it was founded here in Dayton, Ohio. We've obviously grown in other places as well, but Ohio is still our largest footprint. And the state of Ohio, with respect to DriveOhio and Jobs Ohio, have also given us a lot of support as well. And so we've been really grateful to have the support of the entire state. And so hope to continue building here and also working with all the other great folks and partners here on this call and finding new opportunities as well.
Absolutely. As my 5-year-old son always says, teamwork makes the dream work. So we will continue with that mantra. So with that, I want to thank everybody, Kurt, Sarah, Tom, and Stephen. The work you guys are partnering us with, but also on your own is just, it's amazing. And it makes me feel good to be an Ohioan, that's for sure. So just a couple of more housekeeping items. Be on the lookout mid-May for a 2-day policy event around automated and smart mobility systems. And then in August, we'll be talking about EV vehicles, electric vehicles, and charging. So with that, I hope you guys had a great time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Luke.
You guys.
Thank you.
There we go.